touchy subject because no one gets a dog with the view that they're going to rehome it. No one thinks, oh, I'll get this dog and I'll have it for a few weeks and then I'll give it back to wherever it came from. So we'll talk a little bit about people who've had puppies and then they've brought them up and then they have since rehomed them. And we'll also be talking about dogs that come from rescue homes, rescue centres, foster homes, abroad maybe, and then the rehoming of them. I did originally work in a lot of rescue circles, so I have done assessing rescue dogs. I've done a lot of fostering. I've worked in 4 different kennels, so some of the kennels I've worked in have been brilliant. Some of them not so brilliant and could have done with updating at the time, which I now believe they have been. And I've worked with dogs both in homes and in rescue centres and in foster homes and boarding kennel environments as well. So a lot of people who go and get a dog, if we talk about the rehoming of dogs first, so where you go and get a dog that is already in rescue centres, shall we say. So you go and get one. People who do this, they generally have either had dogs before or they know the type of dog that they want to get. And it's usually because they want to have either a great family pet or they want to have a dog because they want to go on big long walks. Or in some cases it's to improve their social circle, you know, their social life. So they get a dog so that they can be more chatty with people. And it's generally quite a nice thought as why people get a dog. I don't know many people. Now there are some people who are a bit like me, where they will go to a rescue centre or a rescue organisation and they will say, I will take your dodgy dog. So whoever you've had the longest or whoever's got the most issues, I will take that one. There's very few people who do that. And the reason for that is because no one wants the issues really. Unless you have worked with certain issues before, there's no reason why you would want to go to someone who has dogs to rehome and you say, oh, I want the most difficult one you've got, or the one who, you know, has kind of bounced back quite a few times. Generally people want one that's quite easy. So most people are quite happy with general sort of training, you know, a bit of toilet training when they first come into the home, understanding a bit of settling in, separation anxiety at the start, but not too extreme. People generally expect to have to do a bit of training, so a bit of lead walking, a bit of recalls maybe, and, you know, working on their confidence. So I think a lot of people assume if they give their dog lots and lots of love, it will be fine. And regardless of what that dog has issue-wise, if it comes into their home and they love the life out of it and they give it everything that it wants, you know, and it's really well cared for and it's trained, it will then be fine and it will lose all of its issues. Now I can tell you firsthand that's not true, and that's not the case at all. There are some brilliant homes for dogs, and I like to consider myself as a fairly good home for a dog as well. And they are doing the right things. The dog is loved, it's cared for, it's, you know, receives veterinary treatment if it needs it. It's got mental stimulation, it has exercise, it has everything that it needs, and it still has struggles, it still has issues, and some of them can still be quite extreme. So the hard part about rehoming a dog from a rescue centre or from your neighbour maybe, or online, is you only know what they tell you, what they choose to tell you about this dog. Now for some places they will tell you everything they know, but that only depends on what they've been told or what they have seen firsthand in order for them to be able to tell you about this dog. So you have to bear in mind, all dogs who go into rescue centres or who get rehomed online or who get rehomed via a friend, they all started out as puppies somewhere. So everybody wants to get a puppy, and, you know, a lot of people do because they want to have their own imprint on it and they want to raise it and bring it up themselves, and they want to make sure that it fits in well with their family, and that's generally, you know, it's a good idea, but it doesn't always go well. And quite often that is why these dogs end up in rescue places or they get rehomed. None of them started out as adult dogs, they all came from puppies somewhere. So quite often people have a negative view of rescue dogs because they think, oh well, there's something wrong with them. or, you know, someone's rehoming a dog because of the issues that dog has. And that's not really fair or true either. Sometimes it's a circumstantial thing. So the dog's rehomed because it, you know, like the person is now having to work longer hours, or they haven't got the financial stability for the dog. Or as this chat is about, is sometimes they're just not the right owner for that dog. And we're going to talk about that a lot, because that can sting quite a lot of people if they hear that, or if they think that. Some people don't like thinking that of themselves. And that's why I wanted to talk about it today, to open the discussion up about rehoming dogs and the right home for a dog, and maybe not being the right home for a dog. So being a right home for a dog doesn't mean being the most loving home, being the most experienced home. It depends on that dog in particular, and what their issues are, what they're happy with, what they need, and the family. So the home that dog goes into, it may be a single person, it may be a couple, it may be a family, it might be a really busy household. There can be lots of variables, and quite often when someone rehomes a dog, they only know what they're told about this dog, as I said. So for example, if you have a dog in a rescue centre, it was signed over by previous owners, and those previous owners were not completely honest about what the reasons were behind rehoming this dog. The rescue centres, they do assess dogs, but having been an assessor myself, I can assure you that you can only assess the dog you have in front of you today. So you have a dog in front of you who has come away from its home or its family. It's now in an environment that it has never been in before, doesn't know it, doesn't understand it maybe. It's quite likely to have been seen by a vet already. So quite a lot of dogs aren't all that keen on vets. It makes them quite stressed. The smells, the clinicalness of it, and the handling that they have to go through. They may have been vaccinated or even neutered around that point, because they've come into rescue lines, which is what happens generally. So if these things have happened to this dog, you're now assessing this dog who is not only in a new environment, it doesn't understand what's going on, it's probably been prodded and pulled around a fair bit, might be feeling anxious, might be feeling stressed. It's very loud in a lot of rescue centres I've worked in, minus one that was very, very good at noise control everywhere. It was great. But it is quite a noisy place. So if one dog barks, they all bark. And it usually doesn't matter what it's at either. So it's quite a loud place. Generally, they have lots of different handlers. So there's obviously the kennel staff, there's the owners or managers, there's the vets who they may have been handled by, and they could have come in for grooming as well. So they might have been handled by a groomer already. And they get kind of handled by lots of different people in a very short space of time. So when it comes to assessing one of these dogs as to what they are like with people or with dogs or with being handled, the only thing a rescue centre can really tell you is, in our experience, we have or have not had a problem with this. So, for example, in one of the rescue placements I worked at, the routine with the dogs is generally you take them out by the collar from the kennel, they go in the pen, you clean their pen out, you put them, you put new bedding in, you put their breakfast in, you put them back in, and you do that for every single dog in that row. So the handling that they get in the morning is that short. They get taken by a collar from one bit to another bit and then back again. So as long as they haven't harmed you or taken complete dislike to it, quite a lot of people say, yeah, they're all right in the mornings, they're quite good at being handled, they don't give us any trouble, which is true, they don't. When it comes to other dogs, some of them react worse with other dogs in the kennels because of all the noise, because of everything going on. Some of them realise quite early on that if a dog, they can bark at them, but they can't get to them. So they appear they're fine with dogs. So someone may say, we haven't had any issues with this dog with other dogs. But quite often in rescue centres, they don't mix them with other dogs. So just for safety, time, resources, sometimes there's just not the availability to mix them with dogs enough to test them or to test every scenario going. So it could show in an assessment where the dog's looking at another dog and it can see another dog and it has dogs pass in its kennel and it goes out for walks and it doesn't react to other dogs. That doesn't mean it's okay with dogs interacting with them if a dog were to run over off lead maybe, or if you were to let them off lead and let them mix. That doesn't mean to say it go well. Same with people. So unless the dog is a particularly long-haired dog that came in matted, it wouldn't necessarily need a lot of grooming or handling when it first comes in. Unless the claws are really long, it wouldn't have necessarily had claw clipping either. So I can assess them on that. I can, you know, fuss them and handle them and things. But some dogs are shut down when they're in rescue centres because of everything that's going on. So they don't behave in the way they would if they were feeling relaxed and calm enough to say how they felt. Some react worse because they are so stressed, they're so wound up that they are more likely to react at you, whereas if they're relaxed in a home environment, they're less likely to. So there's so many variables when it comes to assessing a dog that when someone wants to come to rehome dog, they say, oh, I really like the look of this dog, you know, I've had one of these before, this is what I want to get. And you say to them, okay, well, we've had no issues with this dog. And they go through the whole rehoming process, they get home checked and everything goes well. There's still no guarantees of how that dog is going to be in that home environment, how they're going to be with everyone within that home, how long it will take them to settle down, how long it will take them to start showing through how they actually feel. So there is a length of time that it takes dogs to settle down, and it's not specific. Like, you couldn't say it will take 3 months or it will take a certain amount of time. I generally say to people, for the first 3 months you have a dog, they lie to you. Whoever you see at that point is not the dog you have. And the reason for that is because they're still finding themselves. When they come into your home, they are still settling in, they're still learning about everything, and they probably don't relax properly. Even though they might sleep or they might show relaxed body language, it doesn't mean they're fully relaxed into how they want to show how they feel. And obviously you're building new experiences during that time as well. So there's new things going on for them to take into account as well as their past. So with all these things going on, for someone to say to you, this dog is going to be great with people and dogs and children and everything, and you take it home and it isn't, I don't think it's unfair for someone to say, to take that dog back and say, this is not the dog that I thought it was. And this is where it's a very controversial subject, because I have worked in rescue circles before. I used to be very much of the opinion of a dog is for life, you took it on, you work with it. You wanted it, therefore you should take on whatever problems it's got. And now I certainly work much more so on the other side, where I see owners who are working with these dogs, and I see owners that they are having the struggles, and it certainly isn't the dog that was as described to them, because they may not have known, the rescue centres may not have known, or, you know, previous owners may not have known exactly what the dog would be like in that scenario until it is in that scenario. So I think for some people to keep hold of a dog when that is not the dog they signed up for necessarily, and I'll give you some examples as well. So yeah, I don't think it's that fair to say you should have to keep hold of this dog forever for its next 15 years of its life, if it's a young dog, you know, because that isn't always the dog you wanted. And I'm certainly not talking about just working through a few training struggles, you know, loose lead walking, recalls, bit of anxiety at the start. I don't mean that. I mean some quite extreme behaviours that come out in a lot of dogs. And I think not a lot of people are equipped for that, or are aware of how that can feel and what that can be like, and how isolating it can be to live with. So obviously, if it was really easy to own a dog, if all you had to do was love a dog and give them the best experiences ever with you, and they would be wonderful, then I'd be out of a job. So it definitely is not that easy. It really, really isn't, because that's just not how things work. Dogs are living beings. And this is why anyone who gives you guarantees in training or behaviour work, I can guarantee that this will work, isn't taking into account that that's a living animal, and that it has feelings, it has needs, and it, just like we can, you have good days, you have bad days, and you have maybe emotional feelings and thoughts that come back to you from previous experiences in your life, maybe perhaps traumatic things, stressful things. We build up stress, dogs build up stress. And it's also not taken into account experiences that may happen. So you can't predict what will happen when a dog is in your care. You can't predict what someone will let their dog do to your dog, or what someone may do to your dog. So there's a lot of variables to things. So I don't like guarantees in anything to do with dogs because it just doesn't work and it's not really fair or true. So I'll give you some examples of where personally, where this has happened to me. So a few years ago, I'm trying to think how many years ago now, 8 possibly, I had 6 dogs in my home at this time. So between foster dogs and my own dogs, there were 6. And there was a friend of my brother's who they had a dog who was well cared for, well loved, and she was being left alone all day long. So they were having to go out to work. There'd been a divorce. The dog was now on its own. He didn't have the financial stability for this dog, and he couldn't pay for a walker or daycare or anything like that, and he was having to go out to work in order to pay for various legal things. So the dog was being left on its own. Lovely, lovely dog friendly, people friendly, seemingly no issues. So I said, okay, right, I'll rehome her, sign her over to me, that's fine, not a problem, and we'll see how she gets on. And she was lovely, really, really lovely dog. Was dog friendly, was people friendly, and she had no real issues other than after a couple of hours of being in our home, very quickly realised that she was a resource guarder of people against dogs. So that means she would guard me from the other dogs. Now bear in mind there's 6 other dogs in that house, all of which love a lap, love fuss, love being around you, and most of which would not take too well to being told to go away, or would take too well to a growl or a snap from another dog that was unwarranted. So she was a great dog with dogs, and because she'd always lived as an only dog, these people didn't know. They had no idea that she was going to do this. Now, given what breed she was, I could have probably guessed she was going to do this. But she was absolutely lovely in so many ways, and she loved to be with dogs on her walks, but she couldn't share a home with one. Now, had it been resource guarding items or food or something, I could have worked with that. Had it been guarding against myself, I could have worked with that. Training issues, definitely could have worked with that. There's so many things that I could have worked with, but resource guarding me from other dogs when there's already 6 dogs within that home is not really that doable, and certainly not for what I had the time for. Now, this is what a lot of this talk comes down to, is what you have the time and patience to be able to be consistently making progress in. And I didn't. I was busy with work, busy with my own dogs, and to be totally honest, I could see it would have got way out of hand and in a much worse situation than it would have been had I not just decided to rehome her. And it wasn't an easy decision, but I felt it was the right one for her, because I felt she wasn't happy because she's resource guarding. Resource guarding predominantly comes from anxiety, comes from stress, comes from fear of loss. The dogs living with her were not happy because she wasn't letting anybody anywhere near the human, and they all love the human. And yeah, I wasn't happy because it made me quite tense and stressed and on edge because I'm trying to manage this situation well. So it ended up being a management situation. She would go out on the group walks during the day because she was super dog friendly. And she would then have rest time at home, and then she would have time for herself at home where she could be with me, but not with the others. And that worked well, but it was only a short-term management thing. That could not have gone on and on and on, living like that. She was quite young at the time. I couldn't have lived like that and kind of tried to manage it through with everything, and it just wouldn't have been fair on anybody. So in my eyes, the best thing to do there was to look for a home where she'd be an only dog. And I did. And I found a home where she was an only dog. Lovely, lovely home. They adored the socks off of her. Sadly, now she has passed away. But she had such a lovely life with them. So for me, I think there is a right home for each dog. And I'm not necessarily saying that you would definitely find this right home, but for me, I wasn't it. Now, I was an experienced home, a loving home, caring home, could have given her lots and lots of things, but I wasn't that right home for her. And there was no way that would have been known prior to her coming into my home because she'd never lived with dogs before. So the information I was given wasn't wrong about her. It was very, very true. She is dog friendly, she is people friendly, she has no issues. But unfortunately, she just didn't live well in a multi-dog household. So I think in that scenario, that was the right thing to do. And there have been cases I've worked with clients where there are multi-dogs and they can't share the human side. And I'm certainly not saying, by the way, that I am the only person who can work with this, because there's certainly other trainers, behaviourists, clinical behaviourists who could work with this and maybe have different approach, have different methods, and there may well be more success or other success. So I'm not saying if I can't do it, no one can. That's not what I mean. But certainly I have worked with clients with this, and I have said to a few people, I think the dog may be happier and you may be happier in another home. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's why I wanted to talk about it today, is that there's so much shame around rehoming a dog, and guilt, and feeling horrible about it, and feeling like you've let the dog down, or that, you know, you could have done better. And we have to remember that the dogs are living things. They are thrown into our human world, and they already have to put up with so much in our world. They have to live in our world, and they have to live in our home around humans, quite often not even with other dogs. And they have to do everything the way we do it. And sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes it's just not easy for them to live calmly, happily, no matter how loving or nice that home may be. So as I say, all dogs who start off getting rehomed or going to the rescue centres and things, they actually started off as puppies somewhere. So someone had the very same thought that lots of people have, which is, if I go and get a puppy, it will be great. It will grow up to do exactly what we want it to do, and it'll be able to go off lead, and it will be sociable, and it will be everything. And that is not true, because this is how they end up there. Not all of these dogs who are in these rescue centres are there because their circumstances of the owner changed. No. Quite often it's because owning a dog and bringing a dog up is a lot harder than people think it is. And it's like raising a child, I suppose. Not that I have a child, so I would like to point out I have no children, but I would imagine it is like raising a child. You have to go through all the different stages of growing up. You have to go through all the learning phases. You have to work with the dog that you've got in front of you, or that dog on that day. You can't say, oh, well, yesterday they were fine with something, because they're a different dog today. And for a lot of dogs, they are actually unmanageable for the owner they're with. And quite often it's because the owner was not expecting the issues that they've got. Now, whether that's from a puppy that they have, or whether that is from a dog that they've chosen to rehome, quite often it's just not a great match. So I want to just take away the stigma from it. I want to just be able to talk about it and let people know that it is okay. It's not awful to rehome a dog if they are not the right dog for you, or if you are not the right home for that dog. So I'll give you another example. This isn't anyone who I'm working with at the moment, but this is someone who I have worked with in the past. So this particular owner got a dog to have, she'd recently lost her husband. She wanted to have a better social life, and she wanted to get out and get some exercise, you know, meet people, chat to people, because it gave her a reason to get out and see people, which is, you know, it's lovely. And she actually got a dog from abroad. Now, we'll talk about dogs from abroad in a minute, but just for now, I'll park it. She got a dog from abroad, came over into her home. And unfortunately, this dog was not well socialised. Not as you would expect, to be totally honest, with dogs from abroad. I don't expect them to be well socialised. But she saw the photo online. They said, oh, she's very affectionate, she's very loving. There were photos of her with dogs. So it's like, right, brilliant, great. And she took this dog on. And unfortunately, this dog is not good with dogs, not good with people, and certainly does not like people coming in the home. So the reason this lady had got this dog was to help her social life, was to give her some emotional support, and was to help to improve her life after losing her husband. And very quickly, her life became even more isolated because she couldn't have people in the home. She couldn't go anywhere near anybody. When she was out with the dog on lead, she daren't let it off lead because it would either go off hunting, or it would attack other dogs, or would bite somebody, or these were her fears that this is what it would do. And to be honest, the dog probably would have done. And these are all things. So again, she didn't sign up for this dog. This dog that she now has is not the dog she thought she was getting. She was told it was people friendly, it was dog friendly. And, you know, I'm not knocking the rescue. They assess the dog they have in front of them, and to them, the dog's been fine. But when you then ship them over here, they have all that travel stress, all that multiple handling from different people. Issues can happen in transit with other dogs as well, because sometimes they're transported together. And they then have to live in this world. Well, our world in England is a world apart from what they're used to. Dogs who live abroad, who have been strays, some of them, to be totally honest, are almost feral. And some of them actually are feral. They're not like the domesticated dogs we have here. And I work with a lot of them. So whether they be from Romania, from Spain, Bulgaria, India. I've worked with quite a few different dogs from different places. And the ones I tend to work with are very, very feral. And they're not, like I say, they're not like the domestic dogs you have here. So when you say, oh, they're good with people, they're good with dogs there, yeah, that's because they've kind of just come off the streets there and they've gone into a kennel environment there. It's not brilliant. They might be showing bits of signs of stress, but when you then transport them over here, all that length of time, and then they have to live in home environment here, and there's then leads put on them. So that's a barrier straight away. They lose their choices, they lose their options. They've now got a roof over their head that they've never had before. They have things that mean a lot to them, like space, like their home, like their person, and they don't want to lose that. So when people or other dogs approach, they can become very aggressive. And that's not to say all of them are, certainly not. I've worked with some lovely ones. I've worked with some who are absolute wussbaggins as well, and they need more confidence building. But some of them actually can really, really severely impact your life. So if you take one on and you're quite a sociable person, that could well go right out the window if you plan on keeping this dog. Because in order for that dog to be happy and to be comfortable and relaxed, you have to make amendments and certainly do a lot of management in the early stages. And the level of progress that can be made will depend on so many things, and a lot of those things are out of your control. So with that in mind, I think some people get a dog for a certain reason, but it's not always that right dog for them. I think it's very, very difficult to know what you're going to get. So even, for example, if you were to go on a very popular website that I won't name, but it is online, where you can rehome dogs, and you get puppies from there or dogs, and people will say, rehome this dog, I've not got time for him anymore. He pulls on lead a bit, but it's generally lovely. You only know what they're telling you. Now, it could be that they've never actually walked this dog much, so they don't know much about it. Could be that they don't have people in the house, so they don't know what that's like, what the dog is going to be like. It could be that they didn't know the parents, so they don't know what the parents are going to be like. They didn't meet the parents, and therefore they don't know what early setting that puppy had, early experiences that puppy had at the breeder's home prior to coming to them. This could be that dog's 4th, 5th, 6th home, and you could be the next. So there's so many different things that you're not necessarily aware of when you take a dog on, or that you may never be aware of. And you're kind of taking on a bit of a gamble, really, when you rehome a dog or take a dog on. You can be taking on a gamble with a puppy. So I'll talk a bit about puppies. A lot of people, again, will see a breed that they like. They see that, like, maybe their friend has one that's really, really calm and it's really lovely and it's well behaved and it's gorgeous, and they want one like it, so they go and they get one. But if the parents are not the same as the parents who had that litter, and if the litter is not raised in the same way, and you do not raise that puppy in the same way that your friend raised their puppy, the chances of it being similar or alike are so slim to none, really, because you can have ones who are from the same litter who are polar opposites. You can have two dogs raised in the same home, raised in the exact same way, and they've had all the same experiences, and they're completely polar opposites as well. So there's no, just because it's the same breed or breed type or anything does not mean it's going to be the same as what your friend's dog, your neighbour's dog or your relative's dog. None of it means it's going to be the same. So every dog is different, like every human is different. So those of us who have siblings will know that we are nothing like our siblings. There's similarities, you have little quirks and things that might be similar. And you might have, like, you know, mannerisms that are the same or similar thoughts sometimes, but some siblings are completely opposite as well. They're nothing alike. Some look alike but don't act alike. Some don't act alike and look alike. But it's because we're living things. So when it comes to dogs and you're bringing one into your home, you never really know what you're going to get. So you can certainly set them up to do as well as possible. And you can certainly get the best help that you can. But what it ultimately comes down to is how much time and consistent training, management, behaviour modification that you can do consistently for this dog throughout the time you've got them. Because some people, they want to do a bit but they don't have the patience for it long term, or they don't have the time for it long term, or the resources, the money, because that's not what they wanted. And it's not what they knew they would have to do either. Now, of course, when you have a dog come in your home, you fall in love with them very quickly. And parting with them can often be not even bear thinking about. And some people may be sat here watching this day thinking, I don't understand how anyone could, rehome their dog. I don't know how they could bear to part with them. It's not their fault and they've got all these issues. And it's not their fault at all. But I would argue, if anyone is sat there thinking that you've never had a dog that has challenged you to that point where you have no more that you can give, where you are at your point where you are not able to give this dog what they need. And if they're not happy and you're not happy, who's winning? Who's winning by keeping this dog? I firmly believe there is a home there for every dog. And I have certainly had dogs in my home who have come in and I have kept them, as I said, like with my previous dog, where I've kept them until another home has come along that is right for them, or more right, shall we say, and I give them my support as well. I'm certainly not suggesting that everyone go and rehome their dog because there is issues with them and then go and get another one. That's not what I mean at all. We do have very strong bonds with these dogs as well, and they develop very quickly, but it has to be right. And if it's not right and you're unhappy and the dog's not getting what they need, neither of you are winning here. Neither of you are having a good time. And that's ultimately what owning a dog is about, and giving them everything you can. They're not here on this planet for long, so we want them to have the best life possible. And sometimes that comes with having to make really tough decisions. And I have worked with some people who they say, I would never rehome my dog. I think, okay, fine. Okay, that's fine. It's not my decision. But in my head, I think sometimes that could be better for that dog, because I don't think you're giving them the opportunity to be the best they can be. But that's not my place to say that, and I wouldn't say that to somebody. But likewise, I wouldn't judge someone if they were rehoming their dog either. I've been in that position, and I've been on both sides. I've been on the assessment side where there's dogs coming into the rescue. I've been on the foster placement side. I know how many dogs are in who need to get rehomed. There's not enough homes for dogs, and that's the truth of it, and it is sad. But that doesn't mean that the dog you have in your home is right in your home and that you are the best home for that dog. So on that note, I would like to say something as well, which may or may not be useful to you, and that is that any dog I have had come in my home who I've fostered or looked after, even boarding dogs who I've had in the past, they don't give a second thought to who they're normally with. So I can tell you, certainly, Bosun could go to anyone, and as long as they fed him and there was sunshine and he got a walk, he wouldn't give a damn who that was. Quite a lot of dogs I've had come in my care, even ones who've come from loving homes, like they are spoilt rotten, or ones who have had very, very nice lives and they've come to me, they don't sit there dwelling on it. Dogs live in the now. So a lot of the reason why sometimes people keep hold of their dog, even though it's not the right dog for them, and even if they're unhappy, perhaps the dog is unhappy, they guilt themselves into keeping them because they think they'd be devastated without them. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true. And in my opinion, dogs live in the here and the now, and they think about what's going on at the moment. They don't sit there dwelling on who I was with last week, who I usually sit with. Now, I'm not saying they don't dream, and of course they have memories. That's why they're so good at training. But they do live in the now. So I always think dogs should go like for like. So I personally only use foster homes or go into another home. I don't personally like to use kennels unless they are the super sound sensitive ones I said I have worked in, and that is just because I work with behaviour, so I therefore know how much it can affect dogs. Now, there are some great kennels, and I'm not knocking kennels, but my choice of any dog in my care would not be kennels first. It would be foster home or like for like home that I would rehome them through via rescue channels. But yeah, I'm not suggesting anyone go rehome their dog today, but I just want you to know that if it is something that you're struggling with, or if it is something that has been in your mind, or is something you want to talk about, you can talk to me about it, and I can give you an honest opinion if you want to hear it, or if you just want to vent on someone, feel free to talk to me about it. Sometimes the dog you get is not the one you signed up for. You wanted a dog for family reasons. I've worked with some who they brought a dog into their home thinking it would be great family-wise, and it couldn't be further from the truth. The dog's not comfortable with children, or it's too much of a flight risk, and children have this habit of leaving doors open, so the front door gets left open, the dog's gone. And sometimes that's a safety issue, so you have to think about the safety of the people in the home, or the safety of people outside, or dogs outside, if that may be the case. So there are different variables in everyone's situation as to whether or not it's a good idea or a wise idea to keep a dog in your care, whether it's safe to do so or not. But yeah, I think ultimately every case has to be kind of dealt with on an individual basis, and it's certainly something I've had personal experience of from both sides. So I'm a very balanced person to speak to. I don't judge people. I certainly don't judge anybody if they feel they're not coping and that they're struggling, or they feel the dog's not coping and the dog is struggling. So like I say, if you do want to message me about anything privately or openly, please do. And if anyone has any comments on this, I'm glad to read them. It's a really touchy subject. Like I say, a lot of people aren't keen on talking about the rehoming of dogs. It's like very hush hush and don't talk about it. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen still. And I would rather people felt they could speak about it, and that they could feel confident in their decision, keep or rehome.